Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. We've probably all heard or faced some strange things. Maybe something weird happened to you or someone you know. Well, history is no different. It is full of mysteries and even strange, bizarre and oddly weird truths. If we were to look more closely at all times and for all kinds of people, yes, even famous figures like Julius Caesar, odd things happened. But let's be real, we don't actually learn these things in school. In the summer of 1518, a most peculiar affliction descended upon the city of Strasbourg, in what is now modern-day France. It began, innocuously enough, with a single woman, Frau Trophea, stepping into the street and beginning to dance. There was no music, no celebration, merely an irresistible, convulsive urge to move. Within days, this strange compulsion had spread, an invisible contagion sweeping through the populace. Dozens, then scores, then hundreds of citizens found themselves caught in its grip, their bodies contorting in relentless, unceasing motion. The streets, once thoroughfares of commerce and daily life, transformed into a disturbing theatre of involuntary choreography, a spectacle of human forms locked in a desperate, unending ballet. The authorities, bewildered and alarmed, were at a loss. Physicians of the time, subscribing to the theory of hot blood, initially prescribed more dancing. Stages were erected, musicians hired, in the misguided belief that this frenetic energy could be danced out. But this only seemed to exacerbate the phenomenon. The dancers, their faces etched with a mixture of agony and a strange, trance-like focus, continued for days on end, their feet bloodied, their limbs aching. Many collapsed from sheer exhaustion, dehydration, or suffered heart attacks and strokes. The Cold War era, a period defined by clandestine operations and intense suspicion between global superpowers, was a fertile ground for ingenious and sometimes utterly outlandish espionage techniques. In the relentless pursuit of intelligence, no idea, it seems, was too far-fetched for consideration by agencies like the Central Intelligence Agency. Among the more peculiar projects to emerge from this shadowy world was one codenamed Acoustic Kitty, a daring, if somewhat misguided, attempt to transform an ordinary house cat into a sophisticated listening device. The ambition was nothing short of extraordinary, to leverage the unassuming nature of a feline to eavesdrop on sensitive conversations within Soviet compounds or embassies. The concept, developed in the 1960s, involved surgically implanting a miniature microphone into the cat's ear canal and a small radio transmitter at the base of its skull, with a fine wire antenna woven into its fur. The theory was that the cat, trained to approach specific targets, could then transmit nearby conversations to CIA operatives. Considerable resources, reportedly in the realm of millions of dollars, were poured into this endeavor, encompassing veterinary surgery, technological miniaturization, and attempts at animal training, a notoriously challenging feat with creatures as independent as cats. The project represented a fascinating intersection of advanced technology and a rather optimistic understanding of feline cooperation in the high-stakes game of international espionage. However, the operational debut of Acoustic Kitty was, by most accounts, an unmitigated disaster. The apocryphal tale, widely circulated, suggests that on its very first field test near a Soviet compound in Washington, D.C., the specially equipped feline was released and almost immediately wandered into the road and was struck by a taxi, thus bringing a swift and tragic end to its espionage career. Long before he strode the world stage as a colossus, a young Julius Caesar, in approximately 75 BC, experienced an encounter that offered a remarkable insight into his burgeoning audacity and unyielding will. While sailing across the Aegean Sea, his vessel was intercepted by Cilician pirates, notorious marauders who plagued the Mediterranean trade routes. For most, capture by such brigands would be a terrifying ordeal, marked by fear and pleas for mercy. For Caesar, however, it became an unexpected platform to display his extraordinary self-assurance and a rather unconventional approach to hostage negotiation. He was, even then, a man acutely aware of his own perceived worth. Upon being informed of the ransom demanded for his release, a sum of 20 talents, Caesar reportedly scoffed. He deemed the amount insultingly low for a man of his standing, and insisted, much to the pirates' surprise, that they raised the price to 50 talents. During his weeks of captivity, he behaved less like a prisoner and more like a commander. He would compose speeches and poems, reciting them to his captors, and if their appreciation was not sufficiently enthusiastic, he would berate them as illiterates. He joined in their games and exercises, yet all the while, he playfully, yet with an unnerving undercurrent of seriousness, promised them that once he was free, he would hunt them down and have them all crucified. True to his word, once the increased ransom was paid and he was released, Caesar wasted no time. He immediately raised a naval force from the port of Miletus, pursued his former captors, and found them still anchored at the island where he had been held. He swiftly overcame them, recovering not only his ransom but also taking the pirates prisoner. Despite the governor of Asia's initial hesitation on how to proceed, Caesar, acting with characteristic decisiveness, took matters into his own hands and had the pirates executed, just as he had forewarned. This episode early in his career vividly illustrated the iron resolve, the supreme confidence, and the ruthless efficiency that would later define his path to becoming one of history's most formidable leaders. Chapter 4: The Sticky Secret of the Great Wall. The Great Wall of China, a structure of such immense scale and enduring presence, stands as a monumental testament to human ambition and engineering prowess. For millennia it has snaked across mountains and deserts, a formidable barrier against invaders and a symbol of imperial power. When one considers the materials used in its construction, particularly the mortar binding together the millions of stones and bricks, one might imagine conventional mixtures of sand, water, and perhaps lime. Yet, the ancient Chinese builders, in their quest for durability and strength, incorporated a rather surprising and remarkably effective ingredient into their binding agent, a culinary staple that played a crucial role in the wall's longevity. The secret, it has been discovered through careful analysis of preserved sections, lies in the addition of sticky rice. Yes, the very same glutinous rice that features prominently in Asian cuisine was a key component of the mortar used in many parts of the Great Wall, particularly during the Ming dynasty. Ancient workers would cook the sticky rice to create a porridge, which was then thoroughly mixed with slaked lime, calcium hydroxide, and potentially other additives. This seemingly humble concoction produced an organic-inorganic composite mortar with extraordinary properties, far superior in strength and water resistance to mortar made with lime alone, providing a bond of incredible tenacity. The efficacy of this sticky rice mortar can be attributed to amylopectin, a type of starch found in glutinous rice. When combined with calcium carbonate, a product of the reaction between slaked lime and atmospheric carbon dioxide, amylopectin acted as a potent binding agent. It effectively created a superglue of its time, filling the pores within the masonry, making it more compact and resistant to weathering and even seismic activity. This ingenious use of a common foodstuff highlights the advanced understanding of materials science possessed by ancient Chinese engineers, allowing sections of the Great Wall to withstand the ravages of time and nature for centuries, a silent, starchy guardian of an empire. Chapter 5: A Fleeting Frost in the Furnace. Sahara's Snowy Surprise. The Sahara Desert, a name synonymous with vast sun-scorched landscapes, towering dunes of orange sand, and an almost unimaginable aridity, is one of the last places on Earth one would expect to witness a snowfall. Its climate is defined by extreme heat and minimal precipitation, creating an environment where water is the most precious of commodities and life clings precariously to existence. Yet even in this furnace of the world, nature occasionally delivers the utterly unexpected, a moment of meteorological anomaly that briefly and beautifully defies all expectation. Such an event occurred in the Algerian desert town of Ain Sefra, often referred to as the gateway to the desert. On the 18th of February 1979, the residents of Ain Sefra, nestled at the edge of the mighty Sahara, awoke to a sight that must have seemed almost dreamlike. Snow, delicate and white, began to fall from the sky. For approximately half an hour, this rare spectacle unfolded, dusting the iconic red sand dunes with a transient blanket of white. The contrast was stark and breathtaking, the fiery hues of the desert landscape momentarily subdued by a cool, crystalline layer. Traffic reportedly ground to a halt, not just due to potentially slippery conditions, but more likely due to the sheer astonishment of drivers and pedestrians alike, witnessing an event so profoundly out of character for their environment. The local population, accustomed to the relentless sun and the dry desert winds, were understandably stunned. Snow in the Sahara is an exceedingly rare phenomenon requiring a specific confluence of cold air at higher altitudes and sufficient moisture, conditions seldom met over this hyper-arid region. While this was not the only recorded instance of snow in this part of the Sahara, with other minor occurrences noted in more recent years, the 1979 event remains particularly memorable for its clarity and the impact it had. It served as a vivid reminder that even the most stable and predictable of Earth's environments can harbor the capacity for surprise, offering a fleeting glimpse of an inverted world where frost briefly kissed the desert sands. Chapter 6. The Genesis of Giants and Amateur Beginning. The modern Olympic Games, a global pageant of supreme athleticism and international camaraderie, represents the pinnacle of sporting achievement for countless individuals. Every 4 years, the world watches as professionals, honed by years of dedicated training and often supported by substantial financial backing, compete for coveted medals. However, the very foundations of this grand spectacle were built upon a principle that stands in stark contrast to today's high-stakes, commercialized sporting world. When Baron Pierre de Coubertin spearheaded the revival of the ancient Olympic tradition in the late 19th century, the International Olympic Committee, established in 1894, laid down a foundational tenet that would shape the early decades of the Games. The very first rule, or at least one of the earliest and most defining principles adopted by the fledgling IOC, was the strict enforcement of amateurism. This meant that only amateur athletes were eligible to compete. To be an amateur, in this context, was to participate in sport purely for the love of it, for physical well-being, and for the spirit of fair competition without any form of material reward or financial gain derived from athletic prowess. Professionals, those who earned a livelihood from their sport, or even those who had competed for money prizes, were explicitly barred. This ideal was rooted in the aristocratic traditions of 19th century sport, which often viewed professionalism with suspicion, associating it with the corrupting influence of commerce. This staunch adherence to amateurism had a profound impact on the early Olympic Games. It excluded many highly skilled individuals, particularly from working-class backgrounds, who could not afford to dedicate themselves to sport without remuneration. The definition of amateur itself was often contentious and led to controversies such as the stripping of Jim Thorpe's 1912 medals. Over the decades, as sport evolved and the lines between amateur and professional blurred, this rule was gradually relaxed and eventually abandoned for most Olympic sports. Yet, this initial commitment to amateurism remains a fascinating aspect of the Olympic genesis, reflecting a bygone era's vision of pure, unadulterated sporting endeavor, a vision that profoundly shaped the spirit and trajectory of the world's greatest athletic festival. And so, our journey through these remarkable corridors of the unknown comes to a close for now. We have danced with phantoms in Strasbourg, plotted with feline spies, negotiated with pirates alongside Caesar, marveled at the sticky ingenuity of ancient builders, witnessed snow in the unlikeliest of deserts, and pondered the noble, if somewhat idealistic, origins of the Olympic spirit.